After 32 years of blood, sweat, and missed family dinners building Meridian Dynamics from the ground up, my boss replaced me with someone I trained, myself claiming I was outdated. But when the company mysteriously shut down 6 months later and I discovered what they were really hiding, I realized my replacement wasn't about competence at all. What if I told you the reason I was fired could have saved hundreds of jobs and exposed a conspiracy that went all the way to the Pentagon? The meeting room felt colder than usual when Mr. Voss dropped the bomb that would destroy everything I'd built over 32 years. His words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. Effective immediately, Indira Patel will be taking over your position as floor supervisor. You'll report to her from now on. The coffee in my hand suddenly tasted bitter as I watched the woman I'd personally trained and mentored avoid my eyes, her manicured fingernails tapping nervously on the conference table. 32 years. I started at Meridian Dynamics when Indira was probably still in elementary school, learning to read while I was already reading blueprints and managing teams of grown men. I'd missed my son's baseball games, my daughter's piano recitals, countless family dinners, all to keep this place running like clockwork. My wife Elena used to joke that I spent more time with my work family than my real one. She stopped joking about it after year 20. "Sir, I need to understand the reasoning behind this decision," I said, keeping my voice steady, despite the earthquake happening in my chest. "My department has exceeded production targets for 6 straight quarters. Safety incidents are down 40% from last year. The team respects the leadership structure we've built together." Voss didn't even look up from his tablet as he spoke. "Rico, the manufacturing world is changing rapidly. We need fresh perspectives, modern approaches to management. Your methods, while effective in the past, simply don't align with our future vision." His tone was dismissive, like he was explaining something obvious to a child. Fresh perspectives, modern approaches. These weren't just buzzwords, they were daggers aimed directly at my life's work. I glanced around the room at the faces I'd known for decades. Jake from Quality Control, who I'd hired as a temp and worked with him to get his engineering degree. Maria from Logistics, whose grandmother's funeral I'd attended last year. They all looked uncomfortable, shifting in their seats, studying their hands. Indira finally spoke up, her voice barely above a whisper. "Rico, I want you to know this wasn't something I asked for. Management approached me about the opportunity, and—" "No need to explain yourself, Indira," Voss interrupted with a wave of his hand. "This is a business decision, not a personal one. Rico, we're not demoting you. You'll maintain your current salary and benefits. Think of this as a chance to focus on what you do best without the administrative burden." Administrative burden. That's what he called the relationships I'd built, the systems I'd created, the culture of excellence I'd fostered. Every late night spent reviewing reports, every early morning checking in with the night shift, every minute I'd invested in making this department the best in the company, dismissed as a burden. The meeting continued, but I stopped hearing the words. Instead, I watched Indira's reflection in the window behind Voss. She looked miserable, trapped between loyalty to me and ambition for herself. I didn't blame her. In her position, with a young family and student loans, I might have made the same choice, but that didn't make the knife hurt any less. After the meeting, I walked back to my office, my former office, to collect my personal items. The nameplate on the door still read Rico Castellano, floor supervisor. In a few hours, some maintenance worker would replace it with Indira's name. 32 years reduced to a few minutes with a screwdriver. Elena was waiting for me at home that evening, sitting at our kitchen table with a cup of tea, and that look she got when she knew something was wrong before I even told her. "How was your day?" she asked, though her eyes already knew the answer. "I got replaced today," I said, simply hanging my jacket on the back of the chair. "By someone I trained." She didn't say anything at first, just reached across the table and took my hand. After 35 years of marriage, she knew when words would help and when silence was better. We sat there for a while, the kitchen clock ticking away seconds that felt like hours. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about everything I'd built at Meridian Dynamics. The safety protocols that had saved lives, the efficiency improvements that had saved the company millions, the team that had become like family. All of it handed over to someone who, despite her intelligence and education, had never worked a day on the factory floor before her promotion to management last year. The next morning, I drove to work feeling like a stranger in my own life. The parking spot I'd occupied for 3 decades felt different. The security guard's "Good morning, Mr. Castellano" sounded forced. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt right. My first official day reporting to Indira started with her calling me into her office, the office that still smelled like my aftershave and had my coffee ring stains on the desk. She'd rearranged the furniture, putting up motivational posters and a whiteboard covered in flowcharts that looked like they came straight from a business school textbook. "Rico, I want to discuss some changes I'm implementing," she began, sitting behind the desk where I'd solved countless problems and made thousands of decisions. "I've been reviewing the daily reports, and I think we can optimize several processes." I listened as she outlined plans to restructure morning briefings, change shift rotation schedules, and implement a new digital tracking system for maintenance requests. Every suggestion contradicted years of trial and error, of understanding what actually worked on the floor versus what looked good on paper. "Indira," I said carefully, "some of these changes might create problems you haven't considered. The morning briefing structure, for example, ensures that, Rico, I appreciate your experience, but I need you to trust my judgment here. I've done extensive research on best practices in manufacturing management." Her voice carried an edge that hadn't been there when she was asking me for advice just months ago. I bit my tongue and nodded. Trust her judgment. After 3 decades of building something that worked, I was supposed to trust someone who'd learned management from textbooks and seminars. But as I walked back to my desk, a smaller desk in the corner, away from the action, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. Indira was on the phone, and through the glass partition, I could hear fragments of her conversation. Something about restructuring supply contracts and vendor relationships Rico established. The vendors I carefully vetted and built relationships with over decades. The contracts that had saved the company money while maintaining quality. She was discussing them like they were problems to be solved rather than assets to be preserved. That's when I realized this wasn't just about my career anymore. Something bigger was happening at Meridian Dynamics, and my replacement might have been just the first move in a larger game I didn't understand yet. 3 weeks later, I discovered that my replacement was just the beginning of something much worse than I'd imagined. The text message on my phone at midnight made my hands shake as I read it under the lamplight in my kitchen. "Meet me tomorrow, coffee shop on 5th Street, 8 p.m. Come alone, Indira." Elena found me sitting at the kitchen table at 2 in the morning, staring at my phone. "You haven't been sleeping well since the promotion," she said, wrapping her robe tighter around herself. "Maybe you should talk to someone about this." "Someone is trying to talk to me," I replied, showing her the message. "I think Indira wants to tell me something she can't say at work." The coffee shop on 5th Street buzzed with the usual evening crowd, but Indira had chosen a corner booth where the lighting was dim and the noise would cover our conversation. She looked tired, older somehow, with dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't hide. When I sat down across from her, she glanced around nervously before speaking. "Rico, I need to show you something, but you can't tell anyone we met." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "I found documents that explain why you were really replaced." She slid a manila envelope across the table, her hands trembling slightly. Inside were financial reports I'd never seen before, emails between Voss and people I didn't recognize, and contract modifications that made my stomach turn. The numbers didn't add up. Supply costs that had tripled overnight. Maintenance expenses for equipment that had been scrapped years ago. Consulting fees paid to companies that didn't seem to exist. "Indira, what am I looking at here?" I asked, though part of me already knew. Fraud. Massive fraud. Voss has been stealing from the company for years, but he needed someone in my position who wouldn't notice. Someone who didn't have 32 years of institutional knowledge. Her voice cracked slightly. "You weren't replaced because you were inadequate, Rico. You were replaced because you were too good at your job." The coffee shop sounds faded into background noise as I studied the documents. Purchase orders for supplies we'd never received. Invoices from companies with addresses that turned out to be post office boxes. My signature forged on approval forms I'd never seen. Every document painted a picture of systematic theft that had been going on right under my nose. "How much are we talking about?" I asked, though I was afraid of the answer. "Conservative estimate? $12 million over the past 4 years. Maybe more." Indira wrapped her hands around her coffee cup like she was trying to warm herself. "And it's not just theft. There are payments to competitors, sharing of proprietary designs, contract information being sold to rival companies, espionage. Industrial espionage at the company I'd given my life to protect. I felt sick to my stomach. Indira, we have to report this. The FBI, the police, someone in authority who can drit is persume. Report it with what evidence? These documents would be dismissed as forgeries. And even if they believed us, Voss has connections. Corporate lawyers, judges, people who owe him favors. She leaned forward, her eyes intense. Rico, he didn't just steal money. He stole our pensions, our health benefits, our futures. And now he's planning the final exit strategy. She pulled out her phone and showed me an email that made my blood run cold. It was a conversation between Voss and someone from Titan Industries, Meridian's biggest competitor. They were discussing a merger that would essentially sell off all of Meridian's assets, leaving employees with nothing. When? I asked. 6 months, maybe less. He's already started moving money offshore, selling off equipment piece by piece. Your replacement wasn't just about covering up past crimes. It was about preparing for the future ones. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the revelation settling between us. 32 years of loyal service, and I'd been thrown away like garbage to protect a criminal scheme. But something else bothered me more than personal betrayal. The employees, Indira, 700 people who depend on their jobs, their benefits, their pensions, families with mortgages, and kids in college. What happens to them? That's why I'm telling you this. I thought about keeping quiet, protecting myself, but I can't watch 700 families lose everything while Voss retires to some beach in the Caribbean. Her voice got stronger, more determined. We need to stop him, Rico, but we need to be smart about it. I looked at the documents again, my mind racing. We need more than this. We need proof that will hold up in court, evidence that can't be dismissed or destroyed. I've been documenting everything I can access from my position. But Rico, there are things only you would know how to find. Systems you helped design, relationships with vendors, safety protocols that would reveal if equipment was actually purchased or just invoiced. That night, I went home and told Elena everything. She listened without interrupting, her face growing more serious with each revelation. When I finished, she was quiet for a long time. Rico, this is dangerous. These people have already shown they're willing to destroy careers to protect their secrets. What if they decide you're too much of a threat? Then we make sure we have enough evidence to protect ourselves before they figure out what we're doing. I took her hand across the table. Elena, I can't let them steal from everyone I've worked with for 30 years. These people trusted me to look out for them. She squeezed my hand. Then we better make sure we do this right. Over the next 2 weeks, I became a detective in my own workplace. I used my access to maintenance records to cross-reference equipment purchases with actual installations. I noticed that expensive machinery listed on invoices had never been delivered. I found work orders for equipment maintenance on machines that had been scrapped 3 years ago. But it was Kai, my old friend in the maintenance department, who provided the breakthrough we needed. He'd been keeping personal records of everything that came through his department because he was meticulous that way. His logbooks went back 15 years and showed a clear pattern of equipment that was invoiced but never received. Rico, I always wondered about this stuff, but I figured someone upstairs knew what they were doing, Kai said as we reviewed his records in his workshop after hours. But look at this. We supposedly bought 5 new hydraulic lifts last year. Where are they? According to the paperwork installed in Building C. But Building C was demolished 2 years ago. Kai's face darkened. So not only are they stealing money, they're putting us at risk by not maintaining the equipment we actually have. That's when we discovered the safety violations. Critical repairs that had been approved and paid for, but never completed. Safety inspections that had been falsified. Workers were literally risking their lives every day because Voss was pocketing the money meant to keep them safe. I documented everything, photographed records, made copies of invoices and work orders. Indira provided financial documents from her access to the management system. We were building a case piece by piece, but we weren't the only ones paying attention. 3 days after my meeting with Kai, I noticed a black sedan following me home from work. The next day, Elena mentioned that someone had called the house asking questions about my work schedule. When I checked my office computer, someone had accessed my files remotely. They knew we were investigating. The question was, how much time did we have before they decided to stop us permanently? That Friday, I found an envelope taped under my car windshield in the employee parking lot. Inside was a single photograph, Elena leaving her job at the community center, with a red circle drawn around her head. The message was clear: stop digging or face consequences that went far beyond losing a job. But they'd made a crucial mistake. They'd threatened my family, and that meant the gloves were coming off. Walking into work on Monday morning, I noticed my parking spot had been reassigned to someone else. My nameplate was gone from the office directory. 32 years, and they were erasing me bit by bit. But what I discovered that morning would make my stomach turn and my blood boil beyond anything I could imagine. The first thing I heard was Indira's voice echoing down the hallway, not talking, yelling. "I don't care what the old man says. The Henderson project needs to be scrapped immediately." She was standing in my old office, gesturing wildly at 3 junior engineers I had personally trained. Engineers who avoided my eyes when they saw me. When Indira spotted me, her face twisted into something ugly. "Castellano, perfect timing. I need you to clean out storage room B. All those old files from your little projects need to go." She said it like my life's work was garbage, like the innovations that saved the company millions were just clutter. Those files contain critical safety protocols for. I don't need a history lesson from someone who couldn't keep up with modern business. Her voice got louder, making sure everyone could hear. Maybe if you'd spent less time playing favorites with the mechanics and more time learning new technology, you'd still be relevant. Playing favorites? The mechanics I'd fought to get proper safety equipment. The same guys who worked overtime without complaint because they trusted me. My hands shook as I watched junior employees smirk behind Indira's back. That afternoon, something strange happened. My security badge stopped working at the main entrance. The guard, Jerry, looked uncomfortable as he handed me a temporary pass. "Sorry, Rico. System glitch, they say." 25 years Jerry had known me. He knew this was no glitch. Inside, I found Kai waiting by my car in the parking garage. His face was pale, scared even. "They're on to us, Rico. Voss called me into his office this morning, asked a lot of questions about you, about what we've been discussing." "What kind of questions?" "Whether you'd been asking about supplier contracts, whether you seemed bitter about the promotion, whether you might do something to hurt the company." Kai looked around nervously. "But here's the thing that bothers me. How did they know we were even talking?" My stomach dropped. Someone had been watching us, listening to us. "Have you told anyone else about the financial irregularities?" "Nobody, but Rico." Kai pulled out his phone, showing me a text message. "I got this an hour ago." The message was from an unknown number. "Your new maintenance contract with Voss depends on your loyalty. Think carefully." We drove to a diner across town, switching cars twice on the way. Kai had become paranoid about surveillance, and frankly, so had I. Over coffee and pie that neither of us touched, he showed me more documents he'd printed before his computer access got temporarily suspended. "Look at these invoices," he whispered, sliding papers across the table. "Phantom Industries, Apex Solutions, Global Dynamics, all fake companies. All getting paid for services never rendered." The numbers made me dizzy. Hundreds of thousands of dollars every month flowing to companies that existed only on paper. This isn't just embezzlement, Kai. This is systematic fraud. Gets worse. Look at this. He showed me an email thread he'd intercepted from a shared printer. The subject line read, "Defense Contract Specifications Confidential." The emails were between Voss and someone named Marcus Rourke at Rourke Aerospace, our biggest competitor. They were discussing technical specifications for military projects that Meridian hadn't even bid on yet. Projects I had helped design. "They're selling our secrets before we even submit proposals," I said, finally understanding the scope of what we'd uncovered. "No wonder we keep losing contracts." Kai nodded grimly. "I think your demotion wasn't about making you less effective. It was about getting you away from information that could expose all this." The waitress refilled our coffee, giving us strange looks. We must have looked like 2 men planning something terrible. In a way, I guess we were. That evening, I sat in my car outside my house for 20 minutes before going inside. Elena met me at the door, her face worried. "Rico, honey, what's wrong? You look sick." How could I explain that everything I'd believed about my career, my company, my purpose had been a lie? That I'd been protecting criminals for years without knowing it? That speaking the truth might cost us everything we'd worked for? Elena, if something happens to me, I need you to know where I've hidden some important documents. I told her about the safety deposit box, about the spare key taped under the garage workbench. Her eyes grew wide as I explained what I discovered. Rico, you have to report this. People need to know. And destroy 700 jobs? Ruin the pensions of everyone we know? I slumped into my chair. There has to be another way. The next morning, I made a decision that would change everything. I started carrying a small recording device Kai had given me. If they wanted to play dirty, I'd document every conversation, every threat, every lie. But first, I had a meeting with HR. Indira had scheduled it, claiming I'd been insubordinate and resistant to change. As I walked into that conference room, I had no idea that what I was about to hear would give me the ammunition I needed to bring down everyone involved. The question that haunted me as I opened that conference room door was simple. If they were willing to steal from the company, sell military secrets, and threaten employees, what wouldn't they do to someone who could expose them all? The recording device in my shirt pocket felt like it weighed 100 pounds as I walked into the HR conference room. What Indira said in the first 10 seconds made my blood run cold and confirmed everything I suspected about how far this corruption really went. Rico, we've decided to terminate your employment effective immediately, Indira announced before I even sat down. No hello, no pretense, just cold, calculated cruelty. Security will escort you out after this meeting. Beside her sat Zara from HR looking uncomfortable and Voss himself wearing his fake concerned expression. But it was the fourth person in the room that made my stomach drop. Marcus Rourke, CEO of our biggest competitor, sitting there like he owned the place. Wait a minute, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Mr. Rourke, what exactly are you doing in a Meridian Dynamics termination meeting? Voss cleared his throat. Mr. Rourke is here as part of our new strategic partnership. Meridian will be acquired by Rourke Aerospace within the month. The pieces clicked together like a puzzle from hell. They weren't just selling secrets to Rourke, they were selling the entire company, from the inside. And I'd been in the way of this deal from the beginning. You see, Rico, Indira said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy, your outdated methods and resistance to change have created a hostile work environment. Several employees have complained about your, shall we say, aggressive questioning of company procedures. I almost laughed. Aggressive questioning, like asking why invoices didn't match delivery receipts was some kind of crime. I'd like to see those complaints, I said calmly, reaching for my briefcase. In writing, with signatures, as required by company policy section 4.2b. Indira's eye twitched. She hadn't expected me to know the policy manual by heart. The complaints are confidential. Not according to section 4.2b, I continued, pulling out my own copy of the employee handbook. Any employee facing disciplinary action has the right to review all documented complaints. Unless, of course, those complaints don't actually exist. Voss leaned forward, his face reddening. Your insubordination ends now, Castellano. You're fired. Security. But I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. Before security arrives, I think everyone should know what I found in the company databases. I pulled out a folder, thick with printouts. Phantom Industries billed $2.3 million for consulting services that never happened. Apex Solutions, another fake company, paid $1.8 million for equipment that was never delivered. The room went silent, except for the hum of the air conditioning. Rourke's face had gone pale. And my personal favorite, I continued, Global Dynamics, which received $3.2 million in payments for research and development. Funny thing about Global Dynamics, it's registered to the same address as Marcus Rourke's private investment company. Security guards appeared in the doorway, but Voss held up his hand, telling them to wait. The cat was out of the bag now, and everyone knew it. You have no proof of wrongdoing, Rourke finally spoke, his voice shaky. Those are legitimate business expenses. I smiled, reaching into my briefcase again. Actually, I have recordings. Conversations between you and Voss discussing the transfer of classified defense specifications, emails detailing how my demotion was necessary to prevent discovery of the fraud, even security footage of briefcase exchanges in the parking lot. Recording employees without consent is illegal, Indira snapped, but I could see the panic in her eyes. Recording criminal activity is protected under federal whistleblower statutes, I replied, something I learned when I consulted with the FBI's white-collar crime division yesterday. The room erupted. Voss started shouting about destruction of company property. Indira was frantically texting someone. Rourke had his lawyer on the phone. But through all the chaos, I felt a strange calm. Because what they didn't know was that Kai and 3 other loyal employees were simultaneously delivering copies of all our evidence to the FBI, the Department of Defense Inspector General, and the Securities and Exchange Commission. We planned this carefully. But the final blow came from an unexpected source. Zara from HR, who had been silent throughout the meeting, finally spoke up. "Stop," she said quietly, and the room fell silent. "I can't do this anymore, Rico. I'm sorry. They forced me to create fake employee complaints against you, threatened my job if I didn't help build a case for your termination." She turned to Voss, tears streaming down her face. "You made me falsify documents. You made me lie to the FBI when they called last week asking about company financial records. I have everything documented." The security guards looked confused, unsure whether to arrest me or the people who had hired them. Voss had turned purple, pointing his finger at me like he could will me out of existence. "You've destroyed this company. 700 people will lose their jobs because of your vendetta." "No," I said, standing up slowly. 700 people are losing their jobs because you and your friends decided to steal from them, because you sold military secrets to foreign interests, because you turned a proud American company into your personal piggy bank." Rourke made a break for the door, but one of the security guards blocked his path. Through the conference room window, I could see FBI agents entering the building lobby. "The real question," I said, looking directly at Indira, "is how many of you will still be free to see the sunset tonight?" As if on cue, Special Agent Morrison from the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit stepped into the room, badge prominently displayed. "Good morning, everyone. We have some warrants to serve." But even as I watched handcuffs being placed on Voss and Rourke, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the tip of the iceberg. How deep did this corruption go? And what would happen to all the innocent employees who had trusted these people with their futures? The FBI raid happened so fast that I barely had time to process what I was seeing through the conference room window. But what I witnessed in the next 30 minutes would prove that the corruption at Meridian Dynamics went deeper than anyone could have imagined, and the personal cost to me would be more devastating than losing my job. Agent Morrison read Voss his rights while 2 other agents cuffed Rourke. Indira stood frozen against the wall, her face drained of all color. She kept looking at me like somehow this was all my fault. Like exposing criminals made me the bad guy. "Rico," Agent Morrison said, turning to me after securing the suspects, "we're going to need a full statement. But first, I have to ask, are there any other employees who might be in danger? Anyone else who knew about this?" My blood turned to ice. Kai. The other mechanics who had helped gather evidence. My friend Kai Chen in maintenance. He's been helping me document everything. And there are 3 others. We already have agents picking them up for protective custody, Morrison interrupted. But there's something else. We intercepted communications suggesting there might be more evidence hidden in your personal files. Evidence that certain parties are very eager to destroy. Before I could ask what he meant, my phone rang. Elena's number. I answered immediately. "Rico, thank God." Her voice was shaking with terror. "Men broke into our house. They took all your papers from the office downstairs. They knew exactly where to look. Rico, they had guns." My legs nearly gave out. They had threatened my wife. In our home. The place where we'd built 32 years of memories together. "Are you hurt? Where are you now?" "I'm at my sister's, but Rico, they found the spare key under the workbench. They took everything from the safety deposit box too. How did they know about that?" I looked around the room. The only people who knew about that location were Elena, me, and... I stared at Zara from HR, who was standing by the window, her phone pressed to her ear, speaking in hushed tones. "Agent Morrison," I said, my voice cutting through the chaos, I think we have a bigger problem." Zara hung up her phone and turned around. When she saw me watching her, her expression changed completely. Gone was the scared, helpful employee. What I saw instead was cold calculation. "Actually," Zara said, straightening her shoulders, "I think the problems are just beginning." She pulled a thick envelope from her purse and handed it to Agent Morrison. "This contains documentation proving that Rico Castellano has been embezzling funds from Meridian Dynamics for over 5 years. Bank statements, forged invoices, the works." My world spun. "That's impossible. Those documents are fabricated." "Are they?" Zara smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Let's see. The FBI will find evidence of payments to a company called RC Consulting, Rico Castellano's initials. They'll find bank accounts in your name that you didn't know existed. They'll find digital records showing you had administrative access to all the financial systems that were compromised." Agent Morrison was already examining the documents, his expression growing serious. "Mr. Castellano, I'm going to need you to come with us for questioning." "This is insane," I protested. "I'm the whistleblower here. I exposed the fraud." "Yes," Zara continued, her voice sickeningly sweet. "You exposed some fraud, the small-time stuff we were willing to sacrifice. But what you didn't realize is that you've been our scapegoat all along. Every major transaction that might raise questions has your digital fingerprints on it. Every suspicious payment was authorized through accounts linked to your access codes." Indira finally spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "Zara, you said if I helped with the promotion switch, Rico would just be demoted. You said nobody would get hurt." "Plans change, dear." Zara's mask was completely off now. "Rico knew too much, dug too deep. We needed someone to take the fall. And who better than a bitter ex-supervisor with access to everything?" The room erupted again. Voss was shouting about being set up. Rourke was demanding his lawyer. But I just stood there, watching 32 years of honest work get twisted into something unrecognizable. "The beauty of it," Zara explained to Agent Morrison, "is that Mr. Castellano actually did gather all the real evidence of fraud. But he also unwittingly collected evidence that incriminates himself. Those fake companies he discovered, he was supposedly the one running them. Those fraudulent invoices, they'll trace back to him." My phone rang again. This time it was Kai's number, but it wasn't his voice that answered. "Mr. Castellano, this is Detective Ramirez with City Police. I'm calling about Kai Chen. He was found in his apartment 20 minutes ago, apparent suicide. I'm sorry for your loss." The phone slipped from my hand. Kai, dead. My friend who had risked everything to help expose the truth, they killed him and made it look like suicide. "Kai didn't kill himself," I said, my voice breaking. "He was going to testify. He had evidence." "Guilt is a powerful thing," Zara said softly. "Apparently he left a note confessing to helping you with the embezzlement scheme. Quite detailed, actually." Agent Morrison was reading something on his tablet, his expression grave. "Mr. Castellano, we've just received word that all the evidence your friend was going to provide has been destroyed in a suspicious fire at a storage facility downtown, and the other maintenance workers who were helping you, they've all suddenly developed amnesia about the whole thing. Funny how money can do that." I sank into a chair, the weight of what was happening crushing down on me. They hadn't just framed me for embezzlement. They had systematically destroyed every piece of evidence that could have proven my innocence, eliminated witnesses, and painted me as the mastermind behind everything. "There's one more thing," Zara said, pulling out her phone. "Voss, would you like to tell Rico about his pension fund?" Voss looked defeated, but he spoke. "The board voted this morning. Given your apparent criminal activity, your pension is forfeit. All of it. 32 years worth." I thought about Elena, about how we planned to retire next year, about how we'd saved and sacrificed, always believing the company would take care of us in the end. "The really beautiful part," Zara continued, clearly enjoying herself, "is that Meridian Dynamics will be restructured under new management. Most employees will keep their jobs. The company survives, everyone wins, except you." Agent Morrison approached me with handcuffs. "Rico Castellano, you're under arrest for embezzlement, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit theft of government property." As the cold metal closed around my wrists, I looked around the room one last time. Voss would probably get a light sentence in minimum security. Rourke would hide behind lawyers and plea deals. Indira would claim she was manipulated and get off with probation. But me, the man who discovered the fraud, the man who tried to do the right thing, I was going to prison for crimes I didn't commit, while the real criminals walked free. The media will have a field day with this, Zara said as they led me toward the door. Trusted employee turns criminal. Company hero becomes company destroyer. It's almost poetic. As I was walked past the window, I could see news vans already pulling into the parking lot. By tonight, my face would be on every news channel in the country, not as a whistleblower, but as a thief. Elena was crying on the other end of my last phone call before they confiscated everything. The house was being seized as proceeds of crime, our life savings frozen, our reputation destroyed. But as I sat in the back of the FBI vehicle, watching Meridian Dynamics disappear behind us, one thought kept running through my mind. Zara had made one crucial mistake. She was too confident, too detailed in her explanations, and Agent Morrison had been recording everything. The question wasn't whether I could prove my innocence anymore. The question was whether anyone would still be alive to hear the truth by the time I figured out how to expose the biggest corporate conspiracy in American history. Because if they could eliminate Kai and frame me, what would they do to Elena, to Indira, to anyone who knew too much? And as the police car turned the corner, I wondered if Meridian Dynamics was just the beginning. How many other companies were run by people like Zara? How many other Rico Castellanos were sitting in jail cells right now, punished for trying to do the right thing? The worst part was knowing that somewhere, in a boardroom just like the one I spent 32 years of my life in, they were probably celebrating, toasting to another successful cleanup, another whistleblower silenced. But they didn't know about the insurance policy I'd hidden, the one piece of evidence that nobody else knew existed, the one thing that could bring them all down. If I could stay alive long enough to use it,